We are on Corlandos Scott, Pinnacle Law Firm. Welcome to Donor Concierge's webinar on the 3 T's of surrogacy. So I'm Michelle, I'm with Donor Concierge, and Corlandos is an attorney based in Los Angeles. So I'm going to just introduce, head over to you, Corlandos, and tell me a little bit about you and your background and how you became a fertility attorney, among other things.
Well, thank you, first of all, Michelle, for having me on. I enjoy working with you guys. You have an amazing program, an amazing service that you offer people going through what we help people with every day. So I'm excited to be on and meet your audience and share with you guys and just hopefully learn myself. But how I got into this crazy world of assisted reproduction is, for me, almost a miracle, because it was never on my radar, never on my radar. You know a little bit about me, but my background is in entertainment, and I was practicing law in that field for a while. And just by happenstance, I joined a firm that had this as a major component of its practice. And after we met, they said, "We love you, bring over your entertainment stuff, but there's this other thing that we do called assisted reproductive technologies." And I was like, "Excuse me, what?" And as life would have it, right around that time, my wife and I were just trying to start our own family. And it's looking back, it's funny how it all aligned. But during that period of time, we experienced our first miscarriage. And at that moment, this whole practice, this world became real to me in a way that it wouldn't have had I just been, doing another thing at work from 9 to 5. And so in that moment, I really knew no matter what else I do with my legal practice, I want this to be a major part of it for sure. So
yeah, and
that was 6-7 years ago, and I've never looked back.
It's such a niche market too. And a lot of people will say, well, why do I need it? And we've talked about this with other attorneys and in our other webinars, but why do I need a fertility attorney? My brother-in-law is a real estate attorney, or my sister's a, corporate law specialist.
Right.
Why? And we don't need to go into the reasons, but it's very important when you're doing the contracts that you have people who understand this sphere, right?
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned that, because I was talking to a few months ago, before all this pandemic stuff arose. I was talking to the guy who helps us, like keep the lawn healthy and all that kind of stuff. And I was asking him about some simple landscaping stuff. And I'm talking like I don't know, the wood chips that you put down and stuff. And he even told me, "Listen, man, I don't get into that kind of stuff." And I thought to myself, man, if your gardener guy can be that niched and that specific, that I will do this, but when it comes to like putting down mulch, no, not my thing. Everybody has their specific thing, and you want to be working with somebody who that is their specific thing.
Absolutely. Okay, so and I just want to remind everybody that if you have any questions, you can send the questions via the chat, and we'll be checking those during the time. And we have a few questions that people had sent in beforehand too, so we'll get to those. So tell me about the 3 T's. I'm going to let you take it over, because we didn't tell anybody what the T's were. That was the teaser.
Mystery.
So tell us the 3 T's of surrogacy and how that relates to your practice.
Well, listen, this all came about because I was trying to explain to potential clients and clients in the early stages of their family growth journey through surrogacy, how everything works. And what I noticed with a lot of my clients, Michelle, and you may have seen the same thing, is you come to meet a hopeful parent after, unfortunately, they've been burned in the process, or they've lost out in some way. Either they feel they didn't get the proper services they should have gotten from an agency or a clinic or someone like that. And they come to you with the horror stories saying, "Can you help?" And while, like yourself, I love to help, but many times I find myself wishing, had I only met you earlier, had we only met sooner, we could have talked about this and saved you all of that heartache. So that's when I went to work trying to create just a simple framework that captured the essence of what every successful journey that I've been a part of had. And they say success leaves clues. So these were the clues that I really put together. So if you want, I can just jump right in and walk you through everything. So let me see if technology is going to be kind to me and if we can get this thing to work. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this process, the 3Ts, I really feel like if you have a handle on all of these things, this is how you are able to start the process of surrogacy and not lose, like I think, say, sleep, time, and money. And as a parent, I know, you know, Michelle, these are three things that are a premium to everyone, sleep, time, and money. So a little bit of background about myself and who I am. My wife and my two beautiful kids, we live here in LA. And like I was just saying earlier, I focused my law on this area around 2013, back when my wife and I were first starting to grow our family. And I've had the honor of helping a lot of people through this process on both sides of the table, both representing hopeful parents, as well as those working with them to grow their families, be it donors or surrogates. I started this 3T framework and another thing that we can talk about later on called the Surrogacy Path, because again, I was tired of hearing about things that went wrong after the fact. I felt we could be a lot more proactive about it. So the first thing in our journey of these 3Ts of surrogacy, of a successful surrogacy, I should say, is team. That's the first thing that you want to think about when you're thinking about how do I go down the surrogacy path the right way. Every surrogacy journey has to have a team, whether you're working with an agency, whether you're doing it independently, whether you know the surrogate as a friend or a relative beforehand, or whether you're matched anonymously even before you get to know her. Every surrogacy has a team. You know, they say that it takes a village to raise a child, I think is the saying. Well, if it takes a village to raise a child, it definitely takes one to have a child and grow your family through surrogacy. So with the team concept, there's going to be a number of people on that team. You're going to have everywhere from services like Donor Concierge that will help you put all the pieces of the puzzle together and really hold your hand in assembling that team. You're going to have agencies potentially. You're going to have a reproductive endocrinologist. You're going to have an attorney. You're going to have, hopefully, mental health professionals helping you along the way. Many of my clients even work with nutritionists. I even had surrogate clients who work with doulas and birth coaches and all these things. There are going to be a number of people on this, what I call surrogacy team. And so the first thing you have to know in every surrogacy journey is how to assemble that team. And one of the things that I often think about when I start talking about the team concept is you have to assess your team's approach. You have to know exactly how they approach the journey. So for instance, let's take an agency. You're going to work with an agency to help you find a surrogate. When I say assess their approach, what I mean is you're going to want to know exactly how they match you. What are their match criteria? Do they screen their surrogates before placing them on a roster? When are your payments due to them? When are payments refundable and when do they become non-refundable? At what point can you expect to be matched with a surrogate? What are they going to be doing along the journey to help you at every pace of the stages of surrogacy? Are they going to arrange the doctor's visits? Are they going to follow up? So you have to really assess their approach. The other thing you need to do is recognize their role, because there are roles that every one of your service professionals and team members, squad, tribe, whatever you want to call them, there's a role that each of them play. And it's smart to be very clear on what they are going to do and what you're going to do, because everyone has a role in this process. And if you don't know what your professionals or your team's roles are, then you can be disappointed when something is not handled that you thought they were supposed to handle. And the last thing you can afford to let happen in this process are for things to slip through the cracks. Michelle, I'm sure you've seen the horror stories when something doesn't get filed or an appointment isn't made or something like that. And it may simply be because the roles weren't recognized and we didn't have a clear understanding of who's going to do what.
And
So,
what we often say to people, sorry to interrupt you, is
no.
when you're establishing your team, also look at their reputation and, be sure that your team is, who they are, how long have they been in business, do all your due diligence. That's what we do when we're looking for surrogacy agencies. We're really working with agencies that are, we know who they are. We know that have all the information about them ahead of time too.
And, you know, we throw around the word match, and I'll talk about the word match again later on, but we throw around the word match a lot, and there's more than one match. You're not just matching with this other person who's going to be carrying your baby, or even in a donor arrangement, you're not just matching with the donor, you're matching with everybody. And when I think of the word match, I really think it applies to every sense of that word. You have to make sure that you are on the same page. So when you say really get those reputations, make sure you understand how they've handled things in the past, that interview process is really important. You're interviewing an organization potentially, especially with an agency, who's going to really spearhead one of the biggest undertakings of your life. You know, so it's not just pull something out the hat, or, you know, I found you on Google and there were a couple stars beside your name. You really have to make sure that when you choose those service professionals, that you really vet them. And that's one of the things that I help my clients with this is, you know, having questionnaires, going into that interview with that potential attorney or that potential agency with a list of questions. And you want to know how they answer all of those questions. Is so important, the team concept. And we can come back and pick this apart a little more. I want to be mindful of the time, but this team concept is just super, super important. I always say that when this part is done right, your A team, as I call them, becomes really obvious. You know exactly who are potential service professionals and who you just mark off the list when you exactly know exactly what to ask and what to expect. You also avoid weak links on your team that can sabotage your efforts to grow your family. I say that because relationships, and we'll get to that in a moment, but relationships are so important. And if any of your team are people who aren't on the same page with you, then they jeopardize, you know, shaking up those relationships that are going to sustain you for the next 12 to 15 months while you go through this process. And the last thing I always say is you'll know whether you're getting the value that you deserve. Were you about to say something?
I was going to say, when do you bring the attorney in?
This is a question that people always ask me, and it's going to sound so self-serving, but I think the attorney should be the first person on your team. And here's why.
I agree with you. And that's exactly what we tell our clients, you know.
Oh, really awesome.
Yeah.
When you explain it and when you actually think it through, it makes sense. In most states, definitely in California where we are, you must be represented by a party. Both sides have to be represented by legal counsel. So it's not a question of if you're going to hire an attorney. It's just a matter of when and who. So I say get the best bang for your buck. Most practitioners in our field, we charge flat fees. So there's no guessing, you know, as far as how much your legal fees are going to be. And I know it varies from person to person, but just as a general rule, that's also one of the questions that should be on that questionnaire when you're interviewing attorneys are, how do you charge your fees? But for the most part, I see my colleagues and I charge flat fees. So you at least know what you're getting as far as cost. So bring them on at the beginning and get the best bang for that buck. Make sure that that person agrees to review your agency agreements. Have them look at those clinic consent forms that you're signing with your reproductive endocrinologist in that fertility clinic. Have them go through this paperwork. Even if you want to sit down with them and look through the surrogacy profiles and say, hey, is there anything here that stands out as a red flag to you? I understand you're not a mental health professional and you're not an agency, but just as another set of eyes, you've seen a number of surrogates, you've worked with a number. Bring that person on and ring them for every dollar that they're charging you. You know, so that's why I always say, bring your attorney on at the very beginning. I also say it, Michelle, because, and I say this very carefully, and I know you'll understand where I'm coming from, but there's a potential conflict of interest with almost every other person on your surrogacy team. I say potential because oftentimes it never arises to be an actual conflict, but your agency, for instance, they have a potential conflict of interest, or at least they have dual responsibilities and dual commitments. They take your money as a hopeful parent, and they're representing the surrogate by bringing her to the table to meet you. Even your fertility doctor and the OB, you know, you're making payments to your clinic, and they have taken a Hippocratic oath to protect and to care for that surrogate. So they're really serving both parties. However, your attorney is only serving you. Now, thankfully, with the people I work with, I never see these potential conflicts, like I say, rise to an actual conflict. But it's important to just note that. And you know that if there is somebody who only represents you, it makes sense to have them on from the start. So
Great. Okay, is that team? So what's next?
well, I want to, if we have, let's say, do we have 2 minutes for a little break? I want to take 2 minutes, and you and I can just chat while we do this. But I'd like for anyone on here who's thinking of going through the process, I want you to brainstorm 3 to 5 attributes of your perfect surrogate. And I mean, like I say here, not just somebody who's going to serve as an oven, but think about this. And the reason I do this is because I have clients come to me and they say, I want a surrogate. And I say, okay, well, let's talk about that. What does that mean to you? I mean, I'm just looking for a surrogate. Where do I find one? And I say, well, who would be a perfect surrogate? Well, I don't know. I mean, where are they? And I say, well, this is a person who you're going to live with, so to speak, figuratively, for the next 12 to 15, with a lot of things on pause right now, even more than 15 months of your life. So you need to match with this person. And if you haven't thought through what that person looks like, how that person lives, what types of, what is their diet like? What type of support system do they have at home? If you're going to an agency or even to an amazing concierge service like Donor Concierge with no clue, then it makes the process longer. But if they can arrive at your door, Michelle, with, hey, this is exactly what I'm looking for, I would venture to say it makes your job a lot easier.
Yeah, and I would say we always start our process by having people fill out an intake form and talking about, I mean, there's obviously certain criteria that we want the surrogate candidate to meet, such as whatever the medical protocols may be, psychological evaluation, does she have children at home? She has to have had children, not doing this. She has to have a support system. She has to not be doing this under duress, financial duress. So those are the sorts of things. And then we get into, as you say, getting into what are the other things that are important to you? And remembering that these are women who have already had children too. So they know how to be pregnant and they're good at it.
Absolutely. And they're really self-selecting. You're not typically going to be working with someone who doesn't enjoy being pregnant to a certain extent. So, this isn't somebody who's going to wake up dreading it every day. And that's important to think about, who that person's going to be. So I just do that as a,
that's a good, I was going to say, this is where I would say, okay, I'm going to pretend I'm one of our Donor Concierge clients, and we have to say, I want somebody who eats well and eats organic. So those are attributes that they're looking for that makes things a little harder, because how can you control what somebody eats while they're pregnant?
Absolutely. And we're going to come back to that when I talk about relationship, because in this next T, you really segue perfectly into the next T, which is terms. So you have your team together. Now you need to focus on those terms. And I'll just piggyback off what you just said, Michelle. This is where you want to be very clear on your relationship. And I've had intended parents or hopeful parents say that they would like to police every single part of that relationship. And it's smart to think through those things, how you want your relationship with the surrogate to look. But I've had requests for all kinds of things go in terms. You mentioned eat organically. I've even had clients of mine ask that she only wear 100% Egyptian cotton, which I didn't even know where to start with that. But
are those unrealistic things, though? I mean, we're not dismissing these things. These are things that are
absolutely important. Not. And the key element is, and this is what I tell surrogates when I'm representing a surrogate. Typically, the way this plays out in a contract with a surrogate and parents is it'll say prohibited activities or conduct, and it'll be a section labeled that, and it'll go through all this stuff. And when I approach these sections, I tell my surrogate clients, listen, the idea here is that you're agreeing to carry a baby for another couple or person, the most precious thing they have. And so they want you to do it in a way that conforms with their ideals and their beliefs of what a healthy pregnancy should be. And since no two people are made alike, everyone has a different set of idiosyncrasies and beliefs on what a healthy pregnancy should be. Whereas You might think that, we need to eat organically. I might say ice cream and cookies are the best diet for a pregnant woman. Of course, that's a little silly, but you get my point. No two people are alike when it comes to that. And so definitely don't dismiss it. And again, it goes back to that key word of matching. You want to make sure that your ideas of a healthy pregnancy are completely aligned with her ideas of a healthy pregnancy. But this terms issue goes beyond just the terms you have with yourself and the surrogate. Before you even get to that phase of yourself and the surrogate, you have to think about the terms you have between yourself and the service professionals. And that's one of the things we hinted at earlier, but you're going to be signing a ton of paperwork in this process. It just comes with the territory. You're going to have consent forms with your clinic. You're going to have even onboarding paperwork and stuff with your clinic. If you're working with an agency, you're going to have documents and forms that you're going to sign with them to procure their services, and it's going to spell out exactly what happens. One of my horror stories is I had a couple come to me after they had paid a $10,000 preliminary fee to be matched, and the agency matched them with a surrogate who didn't pass her medical screening. She hadn't been pre-screened, but she didn't pass her medical screening. They matched her with them with a second one that didn't pass her screening. They rematched again with a third one that didn't pass, and a fourth one that didn't pass. After a while, they said, listen, we're out of here. We're very disappointed with the level of service, and we don't understand what's going on here. Can you just refund us our money? And of course, the agency said, no, this was your non-refundable, first payment. And when they came to me, it was very frustrating because I read it very clearly. It's in there. But when you're in the middle of this, there's so many emotions involved, and there's so many places to sign on the line that's dotted that you miss it. And even me as an attorney, I have to really take my time and comb through these things. So I can only imagine if I have the emotional pressure of going through the process, as well as I might not have a legal background, you miss some of this stuff. So it's really important to think about even those terms. And I'm sure, Michelle, that's why you were saying that your guys' advice is to bring that attorney on at the very beginning of the process also. Absolutely.
And also just understand what you're signing. Sometimes you may think that it's straightforward, but there may be something in there that you don't like. You said, what happens if this surrogate doesn't pass the medical, right? Which happens, it does happen, there's things that we're not in control of. Actually, I have a question from Elaine Gordon, who's a wonderful mental health therapist that we know.
She is.
Who says she's surprised that attorneys don't require the psych report prior to doing the contracts. Why is this? And when are there things in the report that impact the terms of the contract? So does the psych report happen before you sign or after?
Well, we're always going to make sure that they have psych clearance before we issue that legal clearance. But Elaine's right. We don't often we're not often privy to those reports. Here's the thing. It's a little bit of a chicken or egg kind of thing, Elaine, because in that contract, there are going to be terms where the surrogate signs off, allowing the intended parents or hopeful parents. By the way, I switch between hopeful and intended because I learned that when I talk to some people who are new to the process, they say, what in the world is an intended parent? But soon-to-be parents, when I talk to my soon-to-be parents, they haven't been allowed legally access to her medical records until that contract is drafted. So she hasn't signed off saying that she waives her HIPAA rights or she waives her HIPAA privacy and allows them to gain access to her psychological records or her medical records. So technically, they don't have the legal right to those records beforehand, thus they can't send them to me or to anyone else. So that's the difficulty with that piece of it. So the best we can do under those circumstances in the contract is to say, well, she agrees to undergo a psychological evaluation, and she agrees that the terms or the outcome of that psychological evaluation can bear on whether we can back out or terminate this contract. So for instance, if she didn't pass that examination, or she didn't, if after the screening it was determined that she may not be the best fit for this surrogacy journey, then that would be cause for the intended parents to be able to terminate the contract, similar to if she didn't pass the medical screening or if for any reason the transfer didn't take or anything like that. So it's part of a chicken and egg kind of thing. We don't have the right to get those things before she signs a contract saying we have the right to get those things.
But
Does
are
that make
these all,
sense?
yeah, these are all things that are in the terms, right?
Right, right, right.
Considered terms.
Now, it may be worth exploring for some parents, whether they want to do a preliminary waiver with the surrogate with regards to just those records. And so a smaller form kind of contract or waiver kind of thing. But again, most people don't have that attorney on board at the beginning to talk through these kinds of things to get, let's say, a 1 or 2 page waiver just to get the screening results so they can get that to the attorney, because they don't even talk to the attorney until after they're matched, until after they're screened, until after they, finish all of these things and head back to the lab to draft that contract. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one of those difficult things,
Yeah.
is that we just don't see it in time.
Yeah, and that's why when we're matching, we're looking for agencies that have already done the psych evaluation, who have already had a preliminary record review by a fertility
Mhm.
doctor.
Right.
We have their doctors review the records again. So
that's so important.
yeah.
And that really goes back. And of course, we're not digging deeply into any of these. We're kind of going an inch deep and a mile wide here. But that goes back to the assess their approach. That's one of those key selling points where if I was working with Donor Concierge, that would be, just amazing for me. Oh, you will do that. You'll ensure that you have these. Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But they have to assess their professional's approach. And that's one of the things you'd want to know.
Right.
For sure. So one of the things I always say here is when you get this part right, you won't have any surprises with the relationships. Your surrogate's going to be clear. And now you can really enjoy the pregnancy. You can enjoy
Right.
the 12 to 15 months that you're going to have with this person who's going to help you get to that next level of your family goals. So the third T in the process is tact. Tact. And I know people say, well, tact, what in the world do you mean by tact? Like, why would tact even be a part of it? And, I think tact really carries the day where team fails and where terms may fail. Because at the end of the day, there's a person on every side of this process. There's a person on the other side of that contract. There's a person on the other side of that consent form, of that psychological evaluation, of that genetic screening. There is an individual. And if you know the proper tact and approach of how to navigate the process, then the relationship can carry you where the black and white of the contract won't. For instance, one of the things that I always tell my parents when they're dictating a lot of those lifestyle choices is that one thing that we can't guarantee. We can guarantee that she agrees to it and that if she doesn't do it, she's in breach of the contract. Legally, yes. But we can't police her 24 hours a day. You're not going to have a private eye standing outside her kitchen window to see if she ate, a sandwich meat or a piece of sushi.
Or McDonald's or whatever,
Or whatever it is. Right, right. So at the end of the day, though, if you have a relationship with your surrogate that's such that she, is in this with you, you guys are a team, and she wants above all else to make sure that your baby is as healthy as you want to make sure your baby is healthy, then she's going to be more prone to doing the right thing. And that's with any relationship. We work with people who we know, like, and trust. And that's whether that's business or surrogacy or just at the playground at the sandbox. So building that know, like, trust factor is very important. And I think that's an intangible that especially attorneys, because we're very analytical, very logistic, very black and white, we seem to overlook potentially. And I think that's really where your other service professionals, in addition to your attorney, comes into play and can help you, weave through that thing.
Absolutely. We always remind our intended parents, hopeful parents, I love that term. These are women who have already had successful pregnancies. They are smart, they are capable, they know about health, they know about things like that. They're not, and they know how much you've invested in this journey too. They're not doing it just for the money. They're not doing it.
Absolutely.
They want, the goal is to help you to become parents. And because the parents have gone through so many things, so much emotion, so much, devastating loss.
Mm-hmm.
We understand how they can be, you know, nervous about the process. But again, as you say, we bring in mental health therapists at the time.
Mm-hmm.
The surrogacy agency can be useful, you know, getting lots, this again, it goes back to your team off, you know, the team is there to support you. So.
Absolutely. And so if I had to break down this tact piece into three more concrete pieces that they could hold on to, the first thing I'd say is to communicate your concerns. And that plays out in a number of factors. One of the things that I advise my clients about, even on the parent side, is that I think it's so important for the intended parents or hopeful parents to speak with a mental health professional. And it's not because someone can judge whether you're right or wrong or ready or prepared to be a parent. It's not about judging that. It's about getting help working through a process that is so foreign to, you know, most human beings before you need to do it.
Mm.
So I think it's so key to just communicate those concerns. It starts at that level with getting some professional help, with just thinking through it. How should I even think about this process? How do I reconcile this? Communicate your concerns with your partner or spouse. There's a lot of emotional components to this, and not the least of which occur between partners going through this, you know, as well as with the surrogate. You want to communicate your concerns with the agency. You want to communicate your concerns with your doctor, with your lawyer, with even that surrogate. So communicate your concerns would be kind of the first concrete piece of this tact element. The second one would probably be to care for your carrier. And this is something, again, that takes the day when the black and white ink on the contract can't. To just think about her throughout this 9, 10, 11, 12, 15-month process. You know, one of the things that I've done with some of my clients who were open to it was create a bit of a scrapbook and a calendar. And we look at where she is in the journey. And it created a bond between the two, because they felt they were more part of this pregnancy. You know, oh, we're in the 3rd trimester. It's, you know, it's the size of this cantaloupe and this and that. And okay, today is the day where we're going in for these ultrasounds and this and that and the 3D scan. And so we're able to kind of create just a level of community between surrogate and partner and spouse and a hopeful parent and partner or spouse. And that caring for the carrier is just key in my estimation when it comes to the tact.
Does it go back to the terms too? You know, what appointments does she want you to be at? What would you like to be at? What are you, you know, how much interaction do all parties want to have? And these are important things to discuss beforehand. Some people don't want a lot of interaction with their surrogate, right, or they're international, so they can't have that. So
absolutely,
you talk about with them, you know, what each party expects out of the journey too.
And yes, absolutely. And I always tell my clients, it's not always about being, you know, in their face or in their ear, you know, nagging them. Sometimes it's just a simple note to say, hey, thinking about you, hope you're well. But like you say, with international clients and with clients who are professionals and very busy, sometimes those things fall by the wayside. And sometimes they never talk about them and communicate those concerns. So they don't know how much communication is too much and how little is too little. So you hit it on the head. A lot of this really overlaps. You know, you're going to have that in those terms, but make sure when it comes to that tact piece that you're exercising those. And the last piece I'd say, if I had to build out the tact with another concrete element, it would be to arrange for the arrival. Again, this is something that logistically you want to plan for in those terms, but you also want to talk through it and become familiar with it. What does that beautiful birthday look like? You know, I always tell clients, hey, you have to pack your bag too. Don't forget, you need a baby, you know, birth emergency hospital overnight bag by the door too in those last few weeks, because you're going to be running out the door. The same as she will. You know, who's going to be allowed in that room for the birth? Will you get to cut the umbilical cord? And of course, most hospitals, if they're working with good professionals, they've already been prepped that it's a surrogacy birth. They already know the terms. And so they're ready with that birth plan. You know, is there a birth plan in place? Where's the baby going to go immediately after delivery? Of course, the answer should be into your arms as the parent for some skin to skin, of course, if it's medically able to do so. But you want to talk through these things. We don't want this to be a surprise at any rate. So you gotta arrange for the arrival. So that would be the third thing in the tact element that I would say is really key to
Yeah.
think about.
And it's surprising how many people don't think about it beforehand. And,
Yes.
you know, I did have a question the other day of when somebody called, you know, will I get to take the baby home, or does the surrogate have to hand it over? And so those are things that a lot of people don't realize are laid out right from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. I call it the expert's curse, and I have to remind myself of it every day. I'm sure you probably do too. We're so familiar with the process that things that are no-brainers for us are really not so commonsensical. You know, these are really valid questions. So yes, do I get to take it home? Will I have my own hospital room? Do we get to recover as well as she? Some of these things, you know, they're foreign to you if you've never done the process. So it's so important, you know, going back to that team element, to have people around you who can help you think through a lot of these things. One of the interesting things I think about the 3 T's is they intersect. So you see that there's circles here, and these circles intersect at certain points. And so the points at which these circles intersect,
Right.
I think there's meaning there. So I always say where the teams and the terms intersect, that's your baby bodyguard. If you have these 2 things in place, you've gone a long way to protecting, you know, your soon to be born baby. When you have the right people around you and those terms are solid, this is what's going to provide you that peace of mind that that allows you to sleep at night, knowing that if all else fails, legally and technically, all the pieces of the puzzle are there, the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. So that's your baby bodyguard. Where your team and the tact intersect, I call that your village. I already said it, but you know the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it definitely takes one to grow your family through surrogacy. So when you have the right people around you and you know how to manage those relationships, communicate those concerns, care for them, nurture those relationships, then you're going to build that strong village. That's, you know, it almost brings tears to my eyes when I think about some of the amazing professionals I get to work with, because times like when, I think it was last week, I had a surrogate who had an early delivery and it was unexpected. And, you know, you have the agencies calling you and you're talking to the doctor and people are sending flowers and we're calling and checking up. And it's, you know that whoever this couple is, they did it right. They have that village in place. And that's so key.
And I agree with you. You know, in this field of professionals, it's amazing. The goal is always the same, to help these families have the babies. And I'm not saying that as like a marketing spiel. It's absolutely true. You know, I think
absolutely
many of us in this field have been in different fields before this. And that's what always amazes me is the village. If there's one place where it takes a village to raise a child, it absolutely takes a village to create this child too.
For sure. And we're seeing that like never before, especially in this moment of,
absolutely,
you know, crisis, where we're really having to pull on different professionals, you know, to help us get through this time. Man, it pays really to have that village in place. And my heart goes out to anyone doing this process in the middle of a pandemic who doesn't have the benefit of having that team and know how to hold those relationships in place. So it's so important.
So we have a few minutes. If anybody has any questions, let us know. I know we have had some questions sent in. So one of them was, it's a hard subject, but termination. When do you start thinking about your beliefs about termination and talking with the surrogate about that?
Remember when at the very beginning of this whole thing, we took 2 minutes to write down who that perfect surrogate was for you? That's when you start to think about that. You do not wait until you're matched. You know, that's something that you need to arrive at Donor Concierge with. That's something that you need to arrive at your agency with. You need to arrive with your attorney with that information in hand, because again, I can't stress this enough. I sound like a broken record, but when I say match, I mean match in every sense of the word. And if your philosophies, without getting into, you know, who believes what, as long as your philosophies line up 100% with her and her partner or spouse philosophies, then, you know, you're safe. And then that understanding is documented in the terms of the contract. But even if the terms of the contract say one thing, that can only go so far. If when the rubber meets the road, there comes a time when either one party wants to terminate it and the other doesn't, or one doesn't and the other does. Even though the terms say one thing, that still puts you in a world of turmoil if the actual belief systems don't match the terms of the agreement. So that needs to be handled before you ever start flipping through profiles of potential surrogates.
Gloria Lee, who's one of our case managers and director of Asian Client Services, wants to know, how would you handle an anonymous surrogacy journey? And that's just to say, we get that question a lot from people who call us. We generally do not work with anonymous journeys. We don't believe that it's the right way to do surrogacy. But what if the intended parents, hopeful parents, don't want to have much contact with their surrogate during the pregnancy and after the birth? And how do you approach that with intended parents?
Likewise, I've gotten requests for those kinds of things, and they really run the gamut. There's levels to this anonymity kind of thing on the surrogacy side of things. I'm really not a fan at all of the type that you mentioned, completely anonymous. I never want to be known. I never want to be, because
I don't know many, to be honest, I don't know many surrogacy agencies that would, or many mental health therapists that would encourage it. So
well, how can you make absolutely, one of the parts of the contract is that you're making an informed decision to do this. And as a surrogate, how can I say that I'm making an informed decision to help someone grow their family when I know absolutely nothing about them? Now, of course, you're never going to, the surrogate didn't grow up with the intended parents in any match, but you at least get to match. And you can't, going back to this broken record word of match, how can you meaningfully match when you don't know what you're matching or whom you're matching with?
Absolutely.
Now, what I am okay with, and what I typically see in my celebrity cases are, we would like to provide a profile of sorts without releasing our identifying information, but give information that's foundational to who we are, information about our family, if we can, without giving too much away. So for instance, if I were the president going through surrogacy, can I leave off the fact that I'm the president of the United States? That kind of thing. But give them enough information about my family, our goals, this kind of thing, to allow them to at least come to the table and for us to have a meaningful conversation. Maybe even some telephone conversations beforehand. But when it's time to actually solidify that match and move forward with contracts and things, we have to let those identities be known for me to feel comfortable with it, at least. And it's funny because that's the third part of the intersection of the circles for me, which is the terms and the tact. And I call that the immaculate mullet. And I'm probably aging myself here, but if you were born after a certain or before a certain period, you probably remember the mullet hairstyles, short cropped, neat up front, but long in the back. So, they used to always say it's party in the front and business in the front and party in the back. And that's what, whether you're trying to be anonymous at the front end or not, it still needs to be business up front. So that's where the terms come in. And then you can party in the back with the tact. But you have to have both of those things in order. And, you're no more or less sheltered from that, or not needing of that if you're a celebrity or if you want to be anonymous. So, or
sometimes there's just people are having a hard time, we do understand, or if they're international, as we talked about a little bit, that they can't actually be part of the surrogacy. How do you arrange maybe it's a video call, maybe it's they send the pictures of the ultrasounds. A question we get a lot from our clients, and Gloria's asking this, does the attorney help in the pre and post birth arrangements, such as birth certificates, passport office in the hospital?
I think they should. That's something that should definitely be on your questionnaire when you're going and interviewing attorneys. The answer is yes. Most times, most attorneys that I know of are going to be a part of that process. Part of the pre and post birth process, depending on where you're doing your surrogacy in what state, it's strictly legal. So it wouldn't make sense for that attorney not to participate in that part of the process. Now, when it comes to obtaining visas and birth certificates past, just getting the what we call the parentage order to the hospital and letting them handle the rest with vital records, getting those kind of things, getting passports back home. I've seen it run the gamut where, some attorneys are saying, that's not part of the actual legal services, but some do. You want to be very clear on that, because rest assured, it's going to be either extra expense on you or extra work for you. And that goes back to that first T. We didn't, of course, like I said, we went an inch deep on all of these, but that's part of that, recognize their roles. Is your agency going to help with that? Are your attorneys going to help with that? It's really something you need to know up front, but most attorneys, yes, should help you with the legal part of it.
We're kind of at the end.
Okay.
What do we miss? There's so much that goes into a surrogacy journey. And we talked a little bit about the Surrogacy Path, which is a series of workshops that Corlandos has produced. I mean, you tell us about that.
Yeah, so like I said, we really didn't get to dig really deeply into all the stuff that goes into the surrogacy journey. There's, in particular, I think about even when you look at the 3 T's, there's parts of these 3 T's that could go down even further. And probably really, Michelle, even these 3 outer levels of each T break down into a number of other things that you don't have time for that on a 30, 45-minute webinar, but it's enough to make you dangerous and enough to get you to think through some of the key things that you need to have on your radar. But I created this course called the Surrogacy Path, and I really call it a comprehensive roadmap and blueprint for how to navigate this process. And it really takes you from the stage of daydream to delivery. And it breaks down, what we have is about 6 or 7 modules, so to speak, and lessons in each module. And we cover things starting with, like I said, starting with that first T, how to select that team, what goes into it. And I really, I can go a little more than an inch deep into all of those. And we have, diagrams, handouts, those questionnaires that I mentioned you need to take to those interviews. I provide all of those things, and it's a community element to it for those who want to meet other people going through this process. So it's been a lot of fun for me. It really was birthed out of, like I said, having clients who have been burned and saying, I gotta get some information out there to them before they make all the mistakes, so they can be equipped when they start the journey.
Definitely.
So, I was going to say, if anybody is interested, and if anybody wants to learn more about the Surrogacy Path and what all goes into it, you can just visit the URL, thesurrogacypath.com, and pretty self-explanatory, thesurrogacypath.com, and get more information on what it's like to work with me. Even if you're not working with me as an attorney, the Surrogacy Path will get you information in your hand, no matter what state you're in, what country you're in. It'll give you some very solid information of what it's like to embark on surrogacy in the United States, and things you need to keep in mind. The fun thing about it for me is I get to jump in to weekly Q&As with the people in the group, and they get to ask me questions, because everybody's journey is specific to them. Everybody's at a different place, a different step, a different stage of the process, and they have different questions. So although you'll have every bit of information you need, it's always good to bounce some ideas off of off of a professional. And unless you have an attorney retained, it's difficult to get in an attorney's office, because of course they want most people to be a client before that time comes. So I just found that it was a good way to get some quality information out to people. So if you're interested in that, you can always check out thesurrogacypath.com.
Fantastic. Corlandos, thank you so much. I always want to stay on and on, but I know that there's a lot of webinars going on, and this is, our focus point is.
Sure.
So.
No, that's good. And I see that Gloria had a few questions. And if you want, I can leave my email with you guys so that you can reach out to me with any of your questions. And unfortunately, Gloria, we didn't have time today to get on there, but am I able to leave information on the chat? If I am, I will.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you are. We'll send everybody afterwards your email address and how to reach you, which is pinnaclecott@pinnaclefirm.com.
That's right. So I'll make sure to get all those questions answered.
Right.
thank you so much, Michelle. I had a blast chatting with you guys, and everybody out there, just stay encouraged, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Have a good one.
Bye.